They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but nobody tells you that the person serving it might be someone you destroyed 12 years ago, someone you sent to prison for a crime you committed, someone who's been planning, waiting, becoming someone new, just to get close enough to take everything from you. My name is Sarah Harper, and the night my water broke on stage in front of 500 people, while a 20-foot photo of my husband embracing his mistress glowed behind me, I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong, because his mistress wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was carrying his child. She'd infiltrated every corner of my life, and she had a plan that would cost me my mother, my family, my sanity, and my baby. The worst part? I deserved it, because 12 years ago, I made a choice that destroyed her life, and now she was going to return the favor. This is the story of how one lie created a monster, how that monster spent over a decade planning the perfect revenge, and how two women, both guilty of unforgivable things, destroyed each other in ways that would change everyone around them forever. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end the way you think. And if you want to hear stories about real human darkness, real consequences, and real survival, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me which decision you think was worse, mine or hers. And share this with someone who understands that the line between victim and villain is thinner than we'd like to believe. Now, let me tell you how it all fell apart. They say the moment your life changes, time slows down. They're wrong, it speeds up. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already standing in the wreckage. I learned this truth on a Tuesday night in December, wearing a custom emerald Vera Wang gown that cost more than my childhood home, standing backstage at the Metropolitan Museum of Art with my 6-month pregnant belly pressed against a podium. 500 of New York's wealthiest people waited in the grand ballroom beyond the velvet curtain. I was about to give the keynote speech on second chances and rebuilding after crisis. The irony would be funny if it hadn't destroyed my life. My name is Sarah Harper, 34 years old, former award-winning architect, current trophy wife to tech billionaire Nathan Harper, 6 months pregnant with our first child after a devastating miscarriage 2 years ago. High-risk pregnancy, doctor's orders to avoid stress, complete bed rest for the first trimester. But tonight was important. Nathan's charity gala, our first public appearance since the pregnancy announcement. I touched my belly, felt our daughter kick. "Your first big event, sweet girl," I whispered. "Let's show them how it's done." The event coordinator appeared at my elbow. "Mrs. Harper, 2 minutes, are you ready?" I wasn't. My hands trembled slightly. I'd been feeling off all evening, some instinct telling me to stay home. But Nathan had insisted. "We need to present a united front," he'd said that morning over breakfast, not looking up from his phone. "The board is watching. Investors are watching. Always the company, always the image." I smoothed my dress, took a breath, and walked toward the stage entrance. The corridor passed through the Impressionist gallery, Monet and Renoir on the walls, soft lighting creating intimate shadows. That's when I saw them, 50 feet away, through an archway, in the sculpture court. Nathan, my husband, with a woman in a blood-red dress, his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. An intimate embrace, possessive and familiar. His hand slid down her back. She leaned into him like she belonged there, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Then he reached up and fastened something around her neck. Even from this distance, I recognized it. My grandmother's ruby necklace. The Harper family heirloom Nathan had promised would be mine when we got married. The one he said was locked in our bedroom safe. A photographer's flash went off, capturing the moment. Nathan's face caught in the light. His eyes met mine. Time stopped. He froze mid-embrace, arms still around her, mouth slightly open. The woman turned, and I saw her face clearly. Sharp black bob, red lipstick, predatory smile. Tori Blackwell, head of corporate strategy at Harper Technologies. The woman Nathan hired 9 months ago. "Mrs. Harper?" The coordinator touched my arm. 30 seconds. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The hallway tilted. "Mrs. Harper, you're on." Somehow my body made a choice my brain couldn't. I turned away from my husband's frozen face and walked onto the stage. Spotlight hit me like a physical force. 500 people applauded. Behind me, a massive screen showed rotating photos from the event. I gripped the podium, feeling the smooth wood under my palms, and forced my mouth to form words. Good evening. Tonight we're here to talk about second chances. My voice sounded steady, professional, like I wasn't dying inside. About rebuilding when everything falls apart. About finding strength in... The applause grew louder. Confused, I glanced at the teleprompter screen. In its reflection, I saw what was behind me. The photograph, 20 feet tall, Nathan and Tori wrapped in each other's arms, the ruby necklace glinting at her throat. Gasps rippled through the audience, phone cameras lifted everywhere. My voice cracked. Second chances are for people who... I stopped, felt something warm running down my legs. Looked down at the puddle forming beneath my elegant dress. My water had broken. On stage, under the spotlight, in front of 500 people and 100 phone cameras. Who deserved them? I finished, even as my knees buckled. The last thing I saw before the world tilted was Nathan pushing through the crowd, his face a mask of horror. Not for me, for the scandal. Then everything went black. I woke up in an ambulance, Becca Martinez's face above mine. My best friend since college, an emergency room nurse at Mount Sinai, had been my guest at the gala. Now she held my hand while paramedics worked. The baby? I managed. Still inside, still fighting. We're almost there. Nathan? Becca's jaw tightened. Haven't seen him. The hospital was chaos. Doctors stopped my labor with emergency medications. Baby was okay for now, but I needed complete bed rest for the next 3 months or risk premature delivery. Any stress could trigger labor again. Blood pressure was dangerously high. Dr. Patricia Coleman, my obstetrician, looked at me sternly. Mrs. Harper, any more stress could kill you or your baby. You need absolute peace, Bartas. 3 hours passed. Becca helped me change into a hospital gown, carefully folding the ruined Vera Wang dress. The perfect dress for the perfect life, now destroyed. Nathan didn't call, didn't text. At 4 a.m, he finally rushed in, disheveled, smelling of perfume. Not my perfume. Chanel No. 5. I was allergic to Chanel No. 5. I couldn't get away, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. The event, the press, I had to do damage control. Not, are you okay? Not, is our daughter safe? Damage control. The baby? He asked. Still pregnant? Barely. Good, that's good. He ran his hands through his hair. His wedding ring caught the fluorescent light. Sarah, that photo, it wasn't what it looked like. I stared at him. What was it then? Tori was upset about the Sterling deal falling through. I was comforting an employee, a colleague. The necklace was a corporate gift, a bonus. The timing was terrible, I know, but that necklace was your grandmother's. You told me it would be mine. No, sweetheart, you're confused. That was a replica for the photo op. PR suggested it. You know how these corporate events are. His voice was so smooth, so confident. Pregnancy brain, honey. It's completely normal. Pregnancy brain, gaslighting wrapped in concern. Nathan, your arms were around her waist. She was crying. I've known her for 9 months. We work closely together. I was being a supportive boss. Every answer practiced, rehearsed. He kissed my forehead, cold and dutiful. You need rest. We'll talk about this when you're calmer. Then he left. Didn't stay the night, didn't sit by my bedside, just left. I stared at the ceiling, feeling our daughter kick, and let myself acknowledge what I'd been denying for months. My marriage was a lie, and I had no idea how deep that lie went. The next day, alone in my hospital room, I did what any modern woman does when her world collapses. I Googled my husband's mistress. Tori Blackwell, Harper Technologies. LinkedIn appeared first. Professional photo, sharp suit, calculated smile. Recruited from Redstone Capital after orchestrating $500 million hostile takeover. Known for finding weaknesses and exploiting them. That phrase made my stomach turn. I kept scrolling. Company events, always positioned next to Nathan. One caption read, Harper Technologies Dynamic Leadership Duo. I clicked images, dozens of photos, holiday party last December. Nathan's hand on her shoulder. Spring product launch. Tori whispering in his ear. Summer retreat. Both of them laughing at some private joke. 9 months of photos. 9 months of a woman slowly replacing me. Then I found her personal social media. Sparse, carefully curated. But one photo stopped my heart. Posted 6 years ago before she changed her profile settings to private. A college photo. Tori with dark hair pulled back, younger face, genuine smile, standing with a group of girls. One of those girls looked familiar. I zoomed in, hands shaking. It was me. Tori Blackwell and I had gone to college together. I couldn't stop staring at the photo. My 22-year-old self, arms slung around a girl I barely remembered. We weren't close friends, barely acquaintances, different majors, different social circles. But we'd been in the same dorm freshman year. Her name wasn't Tori Blackwell then. It was Victoria Morrison. The name hit me like ice water. Victoria Morrison. Memories I'd buried for 12 years came flooding back. A spring night, a party in Brooklyn, too much drinking, a terrible decision, a car accident. My phone buzzed. Becca, checking in. But I couldn't talk to her yet. Not until I understood what this meant. I kept Googling, hands trembling so badly I could barely type. Victoria Morrison, Ohio. The search results made me want to vomit. Obituary. James Anthony Harper, age 22, beloved son, brother, friend, survived by girlfriend Victoria Morrison. Harper. Nathan's last name. I grabbed my phone, called David, Nathan's older brother. We'd stayed close even as my marriage crumbled. David had demons of his own, 5 years sober from opioids, but he'd always been honest with me. Did Nathan have another brother? I asked when he answered. Long pause. James, he died 12 years ago, suicide. Why? My heart hammered. Who was his girlfriend? Victoria. She went to prison for a car accident. James couldn't handle it. Why are you asking me this? What was Victoria's last name? Morrison, Victoria Morrison. Sarah, what's going on? I hung up and called him back immediately. I need to see you now. Tell me everything about Victoria Morrison. An hour later, David sat in my hospital room looking like he might be sick. I'd signed myself out against medical advice. Becca drove me to David's apartment in Williamsburg, furious but loyal. David's hands shook as he poured coffee he wouldn't drink. You want to know about Victoria Morrison? Everything, from the beginning. He sat down heavily. 12 years ago, Nathan was 26, starting his first company. James was 22, senior at NYU. I was 30, working at an investment bank and taking pills I shouldn't have been taking. And Victoria? James's girlfriend, 20 years old, sophomore. Beautiful, smart, seemed nice enough. James was crazy about her. Keep going. There was a party, end of spring semester. Brooklyn, you were there actually, dating Connor Mitchell, James's roommate. The memory crashed over me. I had been there. Connor and I had been together for 6 months. I'd met James, met his girlfriend in Victoria. We'd all been friends in that casual college way. David continued, around 2 in the morning, 4 of you decided to get food. You, Victoria, Connor, and James. Connor was too drunk to drive. James was high. Victoria volunteered, but you insisted you were fine. I wasn't fine, I whispered. I'd had 6 drinks, maybe 7. You ran a red light, T-boned another car. The driver was a 34-year-old teacher named Melissa Hartford, paralyzed from the waist down, traumatic brain injury. I closed my eyes. I remembered all of it now, the impact, the screaming, the blood. Victoria told the police she was driving, David said. She took the blame to protect you. She thought she was being noble. Why would she do that? Because she loved James. You were Connor's girlfriend, and Connor was James's best friend. She didn't want to see you go to prison. She thought it was the right thing to do. But I let her, I said, shame burning through me. When my lawyer father explained I could face 5 to 10 years, I let her take the fall. I testified that she was driving. I lied under oath. David nodded. Victoria got 18 months, served 11 in Rikers. They released her early for good behavior. And then, James couldn't handle the guilt. His girlfriend in prison for an accident she didn't cause. He started using. Got worse and worse. 6 months after Victoria got out, he killed himself. Intentional overdose. The room spun. I killed him. No, James made his own choice, but Victoria blamed everyone. You, Connor, me for being too high to give good testimony, Nathan for not stopping any of it. David's voice dropped. But mostly you, because you lied. She disappeared after that? Changed her name. We never heard from her again. David looked at me with haunted eyes. Until a year ago. What? She found me at my NA meeting, knew everything about me. My relapse last year that nobody else knew about. Had photos, texts, proof. Said if I told Nathan who she really was, she'd send everything to my employer. I'd lose my job, my credibility, everything I'd built. So you stayed quiet. I'm a coward, he whispered. I let her into our lives, into Nathan's company. I watched her get close to him, and I said nothing. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I felt like I was falling. This wasn't just an affair. This was revenge, calculated, patient, 12 years in the making. She didn't want Nathan, I said slowly. She wanted to destroy me. David nodded, and she's doing it perfectly. I spent the next 3 days in Becca's apartment, confined to bed rest, mind racing. Nathan sent flowers daily, texts saying he had fired Tori, that it was over, that he was sorry. All lies. I hired a private investigator. Within 48 hours, I had photos of Nathan and Victoria at a hotel, time-stamped from yesterday. The affair had never stopped. Then came the package. No return address. Inside was a positive pregnancy test, an ultrasound photo labeled Baby Boy Harper, 14 weeks, dated from last week, and a note in elegant handwriting. Congratulations. Looks like our boys will be brothers. Can't wait for our families to merge. T. Victoria Morrison wasn't just having an affair with my husband. She was pregnant with his child. I called my lawyer immediately. Marcus Wells, the best divorce attorney in Manhattan. He listened to everything, then said something that made my blood run cold. Mrs. Harper, I need to tell you something about your therapist. Dr. Elena Rost? What about her? Her full name is Elena Morrison Rost. I found her mother's obituary while researching Victoria's background. They're sisters. The room tilted. My therapist. The woman I'd been seeing twice a week for 18 months. The woman I'd told everything to. My fears about Nathan, my anxiety about the pregnancy, my darkest thoughts. She was Victoria's sister. Everything I'd said was being recorded, documented, twisted. Building a case that I was unstable, unfit, dangerous. They weren't just trying to destroy my marriage. They were trying to take my baby. Marcus Wells laid out the evidence on his conference table like a prosecutor building a murder case, which in a way, he was. The murder of my life as I knew it. Sarah, we have a problem, and he said, pushing papers toward me. Everything Victoria has done is unethical, immoral, but most of it isn't technically illegal. She's been planning this for years. She got my husband to cheat. She's pregnant with his baby. My therapist is her sister. Documenting me as unstable. How is that not illegal? Having an affair? Legal. Getting pregnant? Legal. Your therapist recording sessions? You signed consent forms. Even David's recordings of Victoria's threats are inadmissible because he recorded without her consent in New York. I wanted to scream. So she just wins? No, Marcus leaned forward. We make her confess. On a legal recording, with your consent, with her knowing she's being recorded in a public place. She admits to conspiracy, to extortion, to drugging Nathan for that sex tape, and we have her. She'll never confess. She will if she thinks she's already won. That's how I found myself 3 days later, 37 weeks pregnant, wearing a wire under my maternity cardigan, walking into Westwood Cafe to meet the woman who was systematically destroying my life. Victoria sat at a corner table, 6 months pregnant herself, glowing with victory. She stood when she saw me, extended her hand like we were business associates. Sarah, thank you for coming. I shook her hand, felt the recording device press against my ribs, and sat down. The detective had been clear. I needed explicit admissions. Conspiracy, fraud, drugging, all on tape. You look good, I said. Pregnancy suits you. Thank you. It's been an adjustment, more consuming than I expected. She touched her belly with practiced tenderness. When are you due? 3 weeks, maybe sooner. The stress has been hard on the baby. I can imagine. No sympathy in her voice, just cold assessment. We ordered coffee, made small talk about the weather. Every word felt like playing chess with a master. Finally, I made my move. I wanted to meet because I think you're right. Her eyes flickered. About? Everything. I'm not fit to be Grace's mother. Not right now. She sipped her tea slowly. That's very mature of you to recognize. I need to understand something, though. How did you do it? How did you plan all of this? I don't know what you mean. Victoria, it's over. I'm not fighting. I just need to understand. Long pause. She was deciding whether to trust me, whether I was really surrendering. You really want to know? She finally asked. I think I deserve that much. 3 years, she said softly. 3 years of planning every detail. I changed my name, built a new career, studied Nathan's company, his weaknesses. I engineered dependency. Nathan isn't complex. He wants validation, admiration, control. I gave him all three. And your sister, Elena? She smiled. You figured that out. I'm impressed. Elena and I have always been close. She was in medical school when I went to prison. After James died, she dropped out, dedicated herself to helping me. By becoming my therapist. By documenting your mental instability. Every session, every word, it's all on record. My hands clenched under the table. The wire was catching everything. The baby shower, you sent that box. I wanted you to see it, to know Nathan was mine, completely. You got pregnant on purpose. Of course, I needed insurance. A baby binds him to me forever, and it gives me what I really want. What do you want, Victoria? At first, I wanted you to suffer, like I suffered in prison. I wanted you broken, humiliated, destroyed. But then I realized suffering ends. Death ends. I wanted something permanent. Grace, your daughter will call me Mom. She'll grow up with my son as her brother. She'll never know you. You'll be the crazy woman Nathan saved her from. She leaned forward, and every time I look at her, I'll remember that I took her from you, just like you took everything from me. I kept my voice steady. The accident was 12 years ago. I was a kid. You were a drunk driver who let me go to prison for your crime. Her voice rose. Other diners looked over. She lowered it again. James killed himself because of the guilt. Because I went to prison. You destroyed my life, so I'm taking yours. You drugged Nathan for that sex tape. Rohypnol, easy to obtain. He doesn't remember anything. Perfect blackmail material. You framed him for embezzlement. I've been moving money for months, all traced to his accounts. The SEC case will take years. By then I'll have custody and a settlement. Keep her talking, I thought. Get it all on record. My mother. Did you know that video would kill her? Her face remained cold. I knew she had a heart condition. I hoped it would cause stress, but I can't take credit for her death. That's just good fortune. Sociopath. I was sitting across from a complete sociopath. You called Child Protective Services. Anonymous tip, can't be traced, but Elena's therapy records sealed the deal. You're documented as a danger to yourself and your baby. What if I told you I have proof, recordings, evidence, everything? She laughed. I'd say you're bluffing. And even if you're not, who would believe you? You're the crazy woman who destroyed her own nursery on camera. I'm the successful executive who's giving your husband the family he deserves. She leaned back triumphant. You already lost, Sarah. This conversation is just closure for you. I stood up, touched my cardigan. The signal. You're right about one thing. This is closure. Detective Sandra Bishop entered with 4 officers. Victoria Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and drugging a victim without consent. Victoria's face went through shock, rage, understanding. You bitch? You were recording? Every word. As the officers cuffed her, she started screaming. You think this changes anything? Elena has those therapy tapes. They'll still take your baby. I'll fight this from prison. I'll never stop. Neither will I said quietly. You killed James. You destroyed my life. I was innocent. You lied and sent me to prison. Everyone in the cafe heard it. Phones recorded it. The context made her look unhinged. But I knew the truth. She was right. I had created this monster. And now we both had to live with the consequences. The prosecution moved fast. Victoria and Elena were both denied bail, considered flight risks after investigators found fake passports and tickets to Brazil in Elena's apartment. The trial began 6 weeks after my daughter was born. Grace Elena Harper came into the world at 38 weeks, 5 pounds, 2 ounces, in an emergency C-section after my blood pressure spiked to dangerous levels. She spent 3 weeks in the NICU with respiratory issues. I spent those 3 weeks fighting for the right to even visit her. Child Protective Services, armed with Elena's falsified therapy recordings, had placed Grace in temporary state custody. I was allowed 2 supervised hours per day, nothing more. Becca stayed with me every moment, holding me together when I wanted to fall apart. David visited daily, his own guilt eating him alive. Nathan was in a psychiatric facility, having suffered a complete breakdown after the truth came out. But I couldn't think about any of that during the trial. I had to focus on putting Victoria Morrison behind bars. The courtroom was packed. Media frenzy. Tech billionaire's pregnant wife versus vengeful ex-con made for compelling television. Victoria's defense strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. She was the real victim. Her lawyer stood before the jury, a sympathetic woman in her 50s named Diane Rothschild. Ladies and gentlemen, my client spent 11 months in Rikers Island for a crime she didn't commit. The real drunk driver, Sarah Harper, lied under oath, sent an innocent woman to prison. That same drunk driver is asking you to punish Victoria Morrison for seeking justice. The courtroom murmured. I felt eyes on me, judging. Then it was my turn to testify. Mrs. Harper, the prosecutor asked, is it true you testified falsely at Ms. Morrison's trial 12 years ago? I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who would decide my fate, my daughter's fate. Yes, I lied under oath. Victoria went to prison for an accident I caused. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the prosecutor looked surprised I'd admitted it so directly. Why are you admitting this now? Because the truth matters, even when it hurts me. What I did 12 years ago was unforgivable. I was young, scared, and I made a terrible choice. I turned to the jury. But what Victoria did in response, planning to take my child, destroying lives, that's not justice, that's revenge. Victoria's lawyer stood. So you admit you destroyed my client's life? Yes, what I did was wrong. Then some would say she was entitled to revenge. Some would say 2 wrongs don't make a right. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The wire recording played in open court. Victoria's voice cold and calculating, admitting to drugging Nathan, framing him for embezzlement, manipulating CPS, planning to flee the country with both babies. David testified about her threats, his voice breaking as he admitted his own cowardice. Elena, facing her own charges, flipped on her sister to save herself. She revealed the full plan. Victoria intended to get full custody of Grace, then disappeared to Brazil with both children. Nathan would have been left with nothing, destroyed professionally and personally. The prosecution showed evidence of fake passports, offshore accounts, detailed escape plans. Victoria's mask finally cracked when they played the recording about James. James killed himself because of the guilt, her voice said on the tape. Because I went to prison. You destroyed my life. So I'm taking yours. She stood up in court, screaming. She destroyed my life. James is dead because of her. I spent 11 months in hell for a crime I didn't commit. The judge ordered her removed. Security dragged her out while she screamed obscenities. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a week later. I sat in the back of the courtroom holding Grace, now 2 months old and finally healthy enough to leave the hospital. The judge looked at Victoria over his glasses. Ms. Morrison, what you experienced 12 years ago was a grave injustice. But your response, calculated, cruel, targeting an innocent child, cannot be excused. You had many paths to justice. You chose destruction. I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison. Victoria looked at me as they led her away, not with hate, with something worse, understanding. We'd both made terrible choices. We'd both lost everything that mattered. And she'd lost James and now her son. I'd lost my mother, my family, my marriage, my reputation. There were no winners in this story. 6 months after the trial ended, I sat in a small apartment in Brooklyn, rocking my daughter to sleep. The penthouse was gone, sold to pay legal fees. Nathan's company had declared bankruptcy during the scandal. The divorce settlement was modest at best. My mother was dead, my sister wouldn't speak to me, my father sent birthday cards to Grace but never visited. I was infamous, unemployable at major firms, rebuilding my architecture practice, one small project at a time. But Grace was healthy, thriving, beautiful dark hair, green eyes, Nathan's smile. She was everything. Becca sat across from me, drinking coffee and watching me with concerned eyes. You okay? Define okay. Still having nightmares? Every night, visions of prison bars, Victoria's face, James Harper's obituary, my mother's final phone call, the litany of my sins playing on repeat. I'm managing, I said. Sarah, you need to talk to someone. A real therapist this time. Someone who isn't secretly plotting your destruction. I laughed, but it came out broken. Hard to trust therapists after that. Hard to trust anyone, Becca corrected. She reached over and squeezed my hand. But you're not alone. You have me. You have David. You have Grace. That's family. Grace stirred in my arms, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. She was 5 months old now, starting to smile, to recognize faces, to reach for things. My whole world in 5 pounds of baby. A knock on the door startled us both. Becca went to answer it. I heard voices, then David appeared, looking nervous. Behind him was Nathan. My ex-husband had aged 10 years and 6 months. Thinner, grayer, eyes that couldn't quite focus. He was on heavy medication, living in a group home, slowly learning to function again after his breakdown. Hi, Sarah, he said quietly. Nathan, come in. He sat down, hands shaking slightly. David hovered nearby, protective. Nathan looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks like you. She has your eyes. Can I hold her? I hesitated. Dr. Coleman had cleared him for supervised visits. David had been bringing Nathan to therapy, to recovery groups. He was trying. I placed Grace in his arms. She stirred, looked up at him with curious eyes, decided he was boring, and went back to sleep. Nathan started crying silently, tears running down his face, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, he choked out, for all of it, even the parts I don't remember. I was weak. I let her in. I believed her lies because I wanted to. We were both deceived, I said. No, you were betrayed. I was complicit. I made choices, bad choices, and you paid for them. Grace made a small sound in his arms. Nathan looked down at her with wonder. I loved you, he said, in the beginning. That was real. I know. Do you think we can ever? No. He nodded like he expected that answer. Will you let me see her? Regularly? You're her father. She deserves to know you, even if it's complicated. Will you tell her about all of this? When she's old enough, the truth, all of it. He stayed for an hour holding his daughter, crying quietly. Then David took him home. After they left, I sat alone with Grace, watching the sun set over Brooklyn. My phone buzzed, an email from Marcus Wells, my lawyer. Victoria had given birth in prison 2 weeks ago. A boy. Nathan had relinquished all parental rights. The baby was placed with a foster family. Attached was an address. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something I couldn't quite explain. I set up a bank account. Anonymous donations to the foster family raising Victoria's son. Enough to cover expenses. Give him opportunities. Becca found me doing it. Sarah, what are you doing? The right thing, finally. That's her son. That's an innocent child who didn't ask for any of this. Just like Grace. She watched me for a moment, then hugged me tight. You're a better person than I'd be. I wasn't sure about that. I just knew I couldn't let another child suffer for the sins of their parents. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Prison postmark. My hand shook as I opened it. Victoria's handwriting, 3 pages, single-spaced. I read it twice, then I folded it carefully and placed it in a box labeled, Grace when you're older. The letter confirmed what I already knew. This story didn't have a happy ending, just an ending. Victoria would serve 12 years, Elena 4. Nathan would spend years in treatment, might never fully recover. My mother was dead. My family was shattered. My career was in ruins. But Grace was safe, healthy, loved. Sometimes that has to be enough. I kept Victoria's letter in my desk drawer for 3 weeks before I could bring myself to read it again. The first time had been enough to shatter whatever remaining illusions I had about closure or justice or redemption. But tonight, with Grace finally asleep after 2 hours of fussiness, with rain pattering against the windows and the city humming its endless song outside, I poured a glass of wine I wouldn't drink and opened the letter. Dear Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll have been in prison for 6 months. They tell me I have 11 and a half years left. Good behavior might reduce it to 8. I'll be 40 when I get out. You'll be 42. Grace will be 9. I've had time to think. Too much time. The therapist here says I have complex PTSD and antisocial personality disorder. Labels, excuses, I know what I am. I'm someone who spent 12 years planning revenge and ended up with nothing. My son was taken from me 2 hours after I gave birth. I held him once, named him James after the man you killed. Then they took him away. Foster care, just like I planned for Grace. The universe has a sick sense of humor. I stopped reading, put the letter down, looked at Grace sleeping in her bassinet, her tiny chest rising and falling. The most precious thing in my world. Victoria had held her son once. One time. I picked up the letter again. You're probably wondering why I'm writing. Not to apologize, I'm not sorry for what I did. You deserve to suffer, you still do. But Elena told me something during her testimony that I can't stop thinking about. You admitted what you did, under oath. You confessed to perjury, even though it meant you looked guilty too, even though it could have hurt your custody case. Why did you do that? I've been asking myself that question for 6 months. The Sarah I knew, the 22-year-old drunk driver who let me go to prison, she would never confess. She would protect herself at all costs. So either you changed or I never knew you at all. The question haunted me because I'd asked myself the same thing. Why had I confessed? Marcus had advised against it, said it would weaken our case, make me look culpable. But I'd done it anyway, because 12 years of lies had to end somewhere. Here's what keeps me up at night. I spent 12 years destroying you, and in the process, I proved that you were right to be afraid of the truth. When you lied at my trial, you were a scared kid making a terrible choice. But I became the monster that justified your fear. I became someone who would drug a man, steal a baby, destroy families. I made you write about me. I closed my eyes. She wasn't wrong. You asked me that day in the cafe what I wanted. I said I wanted you to suffer. But that's not true. I wanted James back. I wanted my life before the accident, when I was 20, in love, and the future was this bright, shining thing. I wanted to undo that night. I wanted you to have been honest. But since I couldn't have any of that, I settled for revenge. And it was empty. Even when I had Nathan, when I was pregnant, when I thought I'd win, it never filled the hole. Because the hole isn't you-shaped, it's James-shaped. And nothing will ever fill that. The rain fell harder. I thought about holes, about the Nathan-shaped hole in my life, the mother-shaped hole, the family-shaped hole, about Grace, who would grow up with a father who barely knew her and a mother who'd been broken and put back together wrong. I need you to know something, Sarah. Not for forgiveness, but for closure. My sister Elena visits me once a month. She told me that you've been sending money to my son's foster family. Anonymous donations, but she traced them. You're helping the child of the woman who tried to destroy you. I don't understand that. I don't understand you. I didn't understand myself either. When I'd set up those donations, Becca had asked me why. I hadn't had a good answer. Maybe because I knew what it was like to grow up without a father, without family, without the resources to build a real life. Maybe because that baby was innocent. Maybe because I was trying to be better than I'd been at 22. Maybe that's the difference between us. When someone hurts you, you try to help. When someone hurts me, I try to destroy. I don't think you're a good person, Sarah. You let me rot in prison for a year. You lied under oath. You were a coward. But I'm not a good person either. I'm worse. And maybe that's the real tragedy. We both did terrible things, but you tried to become better. I became worse. Thunder cracked outside. Grace stirred, whimpered, settled back into sleep. I got up, checked on her, smoothed her dark hair. So much innocence. So much hope. There's one more thing. Elena told me Grace is beautiful. Dark hair, green eyes. Looks like you. I'm glad I didn't get her. Not because you deserve to keep her, but because she deserves better than me. Nathan visits me sometimes. Did you know that? He's heavily medicated, barely coherent, but he comes. He sits in the visitor's room and cries. He says, I destroyed his life. He's right, but you know what? He let me. He chose to cheat. He chose to lie. He chose to be weak. Just like I chose revenge over healing. Just like you chose yourself over me 12 years ago. We all made our choices. These are our consequences. I hope you sleep better than I do. Victoria P.S. I named my son James David Morrison. David, after Nathan's brother, the only person in your life who tried to stop this. I thought you should know. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the box. One day when Grace was old enough, I'd show it to her, let her understand the full weight of choices and consequences. For now, I just held my daughter and counted her breaths in the dark. A year after Victoria's sentencing, I walked into the Brooklyn Community Center with Grace on my hip and a portfolio under my arm. The center was outdated, falling apart, but serving hundreds of low-income families every week. They needed an architect who understood building on a budget. They needed someone who understood second chances. David worked here now, running addiction recovery groups. He'd recommended me for the project. Pro bono work, nothing glamorous, but it felt right. The director, a woman named Patricia Chen, looked at my portfolio with interest. These are impressive. Why aren't you working for major firms? Long story. I Googled you, she said bluntly. I know the story, I'm asking anyway. I appreciated the honesty. I made mistakes. I'm trying to do better. She studied me for a moment. Grace grabbed at my necklace, babbling happily. Your daughter is beautiful. Thank you. The center needs help. Budget is tight. Timeline is aggressive. Can you handle it? Yes. She extended her hand. Then let's rebuild this place. That's how I rebuilt my life, one small project at a time. Community centers, affordable housing, public schools, work that mattered, work that helped people who needed it. The money wasn't great, but it was honest. Nathan visited Grace twice a month now, supervised by David. He was getting better, slowly, could hold conversations, remember things. He'd never be the man he was before, but he was trying. Grace was 14 months old, walking, saying a few words. Mama and Becca and Bird. She loved birds. We'd spend hours in Prospect Park watching pigeons. My sister Kate sent a card on Grace's first birthday. Just a card, no visit, no phone call, but it was something, a crack in the wall. My father sent money every month, never visited, but he sent money. I was building something new. Not better than before necessarily, just different, more honest. Becca remained constant. She and Tyler came over every Sunday. We'd make dinner, let the kids play, pretend everything was normal. Sometimes it almost felt true. Then I'd wake up at 3 in the morning from nightmares. Victoria's face, the accident, my mother's final call, James Harper's obituary. The past never really left. It just learned to coexist with the present. One afternoon while Grace napped, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject, James David Morrison. My hands froze on the keyboard. I opened it. Ms. Harper, my name is Jennifer Torres. I'm the foster mother caring for James David Morrison. Your attorney gave me your email address and said you might be open to communication. I want you to know that James is thriving. He's 15 months old now, walking, laughing, learning sign language. He's a happy baby despite a difficult start. Your donations have been a godsend. We've been able to provide therapies, education, opportunities we couldn't have afforded otherwise. But more than financial support, I wanted you to understand the impact of your choice. You didn't have to help this child. His mother tried to destroy you. You owed him nothing. Yet you chose kindness anyway. That choice changed his life, and it taught me something important about breaking cycles. James will grow up knowing he was wanted, loved, given chances. That's a gift. Thank you, Jennifer. I read the email 3 times, then saved it in a folder labeled Grace's Future. One day I'd tell my daughter about the boy named James, about his mother Victoria, about the choices that led to all of this. I'd tell her the truth, the messy, complicated, morally gray truth, and I'd hope she learned to make better choices than I did. Grace's second birthday fell on a Tuesday in December, exactly 2 years after my life had imploded at that gala. Becca insisted on throwing a party. Nothing fancy, just us, David Tyler, a few parents from Grace's playgroup, cake and presents, and children shrieking with joy. Normal. Blessedly, wonderfully normal. Nathan came for an hour, supervised by David. He brought a stuffed elephant. Grace examined it solemnly, decided it was acceptable, and toddled off to show Tyler. Nathan watched her with such longing it hurt to see. "She's perfect," he said quietly. "She is. Like you." I didn't know how to respond to that. We weren't those people anymore. The couple who'd fallen in love over architecture and ambition. We were strangers who shared DNA with a toddler. "I'm getting better," he said. "DeReynolds says I might be able to move to independent living next year." "That's good, Nathan. I'm writing you letters, in therapy, letters I'll never send, trying to understand what happened, how I let her in, how I became someone I don't recognize. We all became people we don't recognize." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "Do you ever forgive yourself?" The question hung in the air between us. Did I forgive myself for the accident, for the lie, for letting Victoria go to prison, for creating the monster who destroyed so many lives? "I'm working on it," I said. "Forgiveness is a process, not a destination." "That's very therapist of you." "I'm in therapy 3 times a week. I've learned the language." He smiled just a little. Then Grace came running back, elephant clutched in one hand, chocolate cake smeared on her face. "Dada!" she squealed, showing him the toy. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. First time she'd called him that unprompted. "Hi, baby girl," he whispered. After he left, Becca helped me clean up while the kids played. "That was good," she said, "him being here." It felt strange. "Everything about this situation is strange, but you're handling it." "Am I?" I loaded plates into the dishwasher. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending to be a functional human, going through the motions. That's what functional humans do. We all fake it until we make it." Inspiring. I'm a realist. She grabbed my hand, made me look at her. "But seriously, Sarah, you've rebuilt. You have a career again. Grace is thriving. You're managing Nathan's visits with maturity. You're sponsoring Victoria's kid. You're doing better than fine." "I don't sleep." "Join the club. I haven't slept well since Tyler was born. Welcome to motherhood." I laughed despite myself. "When did you become the wise one?" "I was always the wise one, Darren. You just married rich and forgot." We finished cleaning. Tyler and Grace played until both were exhausted. Becca packed them up, hugged me goodbye. "Same time next week?" "Wouldn't miss it." After they left, I put Grace to bed. She fought it, as always, wanting one more story, one more song, one more glass of water. Finally, she settled, clutching her new elephant. "Dada," she murmured sleepily. "Yes, baby. Dada loves you." "Mama. Mama loves you too." "Bird." "Yes, we'll see birds tomorrow." She drifted off. I sat in the rocking chair David had given us, watching her sleep. 2 years old, growing so fast. Soon she'd start asking questions I didn't have good answers to. My phone buzzed. Email from Marcus. "Victoria's parole hearing is in 8 years. As the victim, you have the right to submit a statement. Thought you should know." 8 years. Grace would be 10, in 4th grade, maybe playing soccer or taking piano lessons. Living a life Victoria would miss entirely. Would I oppose her parole, fight to keep her locked up, or acknowledge that 8 years might be enough time for someone to change? I didn't know yet. I had 8 years to decide. For now, I just watched my daughter sleep and counted my blessings, one day at a time. 5 years after Victoria's conviction, I was standing in line at a coffee shop in Park Slope when I heard the name that still made my chest tighten. James, come here, sweetie. I turned, a woman in her 40s, Latina, warm smile holding the hand of a 5-year-old boy, dark hair, Victoria's eyes, Nathan's jawline, Jennifer Torres, Victoria's son's foster mother. I recognized her from the photo she'd sent in one of her annual updates. Our eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face. Miss Harper? Sarah, please. Grace was at kindergarten. I was alone, vulnerable, face to face with the woman raising my ex-husband's son, with the woman who tried to destroy me. I'm sorry, Jennifer said. I didn't mean to intrude. James, stay close. The boy looked up at me with curious eyes. 5 years old, the same age as his brother, Grace's half-brother, would have been if the baby shower revelation had been true. Instead, James was 7 months younger than Grace. It's okay, I said. You're not intruding. Awkward silence. The barista called the next customer. Jennifer collected her coffee, ushered James toward the door. Then she paused. I send you updates, she said, but I never know if you actually want them. I read every one. Really? Every word. I want to know he's okay. She studied me for a long moment. Would you like to meet him? Properly? My heart hammered. This was Nathan's son, Victoria's son, a living reminder of everything that had shattered my life. But he was also an innocent child, and I'd been helping raise him from a distance for 5 years. Yes, I said, I'd like that. We met the following Saturday at Prospect Park. Jennifer brought James, I brought Grace. The kids eyed each other warily, the way 5-year-olds do. Then Grace offered to share her crackers, and they became instant friends. Jennifer and I sat on a bench, watching them play. He asks about his birth mother sometimes, Jennifer said quietly. I tell him she made mistakes but loved him very much. That's generous. It's true. In her own twisted way, Victoria loved that baby. She just loved revenge more. We watched James chase Grace around the playground. He had Nathan's laugh, Victoria's intensity, a combination of two broken people. I'm adopting him, Jennifer said. Officially, his birth parents both relinquished rights. He'll be James Torres. That's wonderful. I wanted you to know, in case you ever wanted to tell Grace about her half-brother. I'd thought about this moment for 5 years. How to explain to my daughter that her father had another child, that her mother's enemy had given birth to her sibling. Not yet, I said, but someday, when she's old enough to understand. Understand what? That families are complicated, that people make mistakes, that we're all connected in strange ways. Jennifer nodded. For what it's worth, what you've done, helping him, Victoria doesn't know. I've never told her. Why not? Because I don't think she could handle it. Knowing that you, of all people, are the reason her son is thriving, it would break whatever's left of her. Some petty part of me wanted Victoria to know, wanted her to feel that particular knife twist. But a larger part of me, the part that had been growing slowly over 5 years of therapy and rebuilding and learning to live with my choices, didn't need that victory. Keep it that way, I said. It's not about her, it's about him. Grace ran over, breathless and happy. Mama, James is really fast. I see that, baby. Can he come to my birthday party? I looked at Jennifer. She looked back, a question in her eye. If his mom says yes, I told Grace. Please, James added, with Victoria's determined expression. We'll see, Jennifer said, the universal parent response. The kids ran back to the playground. Jennifer and I sat in comfortable silence. Thank you, she said eventually. For what? For being better than you had to be. I didn't feel better. I felt tired, older, scarred, but I was trying. That had to count for something. Grace was 7 years old when she asked the question I'd been dreading. Mama, why don't I see Daddy more? We were making breakfast. Saturday morning, pancakes, the radio playing soft jazz. Normal routine, but the question shattered it like glass. I turned off the stove, sat down at the table across from my daughter. 7 years old, smart, perceptive, old enough to notice that her father only visited twice a month, Always supervised, always briefly. Daddy got sick, I said carefully. A long time ago, before you were born. And he's still getting better. What kind of sick? The kind that lives in your brain, that makes it hard to think clearly or make good choices. She considered this, fork pushing pancakes around her plate. Is it my fault? No, baby, God, no. This has nothing to do with you. Then why? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones, and those mistakes have consequences that last a long time. What mistakes did Daddy make? How do you explain this to a 7-year-old? That her father had an affair with a woman seeking revenge for a crime her mother committed. That the affair produced a son, Grace's half-brother, currently living in Park Slope with his adoptive mother. That her grandmother died from the stress of it all. That her mother sent a woman to prison for a year and had been living with the guilt ever since. You don't. Not at 7. He trusted the wrong person, I said simply, and that person hurt a lot of people. Did they hurt you? Yes. Well, did they hurt Daddy? Yes. Did they hurt me? I looked at my daughter, healthy, happy, thriving, good grades, best friends, loved gymnastics and reading and birds. She had dance recitals and soccer practice, and a mother who would burn down the world for her. They tried, I said, but they didn't succeed. She thought about this, then resumed eating pancakes. Crisis apparently averted. Mama? Yes, baby? I'm glad they didn't hurt us. Me too. After breakfast, she went to her room to play. I cleaned up the kitchen, hands shaking slightly. That conversation had been easier than expected, but it was just the first of many. Soon she'd ask why her grandmother was dead, why Aunt Kate didn't visit, why we lived in a small apartment when Daddy used to be rich, why there were news articles about us if you Googled our names. Soon I'd have to tell her the truth. All of it. The phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Ms. Harper? This is Warden Michelle Rodriguez from Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. My stomach dropped. Is Victoria? Miss Morrison is fine. She asked me to call you. She has a message. I don't want to hear anything she has to say. It's important, please. I waited, heart pounding. Ms. Morrison wanted you to know that she's been approved for a college program. She's studying social work. Want us to help people when she gets out. And she wanted me to tell you, thank you for James. I couldn't speak. She knows about the donations, about Jennifer, about everything you've done. She wanted you to know she knows. I don't want her gratitude. She's not offering gratitude. She's offering acknowledgement. There's a difference. The warden paused. For what it's worth, Ms. Harper, I've worked here 20 years. I've seen a lot of inmates. Most don't change, but some do. Ms. Morrison is trying. It might not mean much to you, but it means something. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen looking at the photos on my refrigerator. Grace at her dance recital. Grace and Tyler at the park. Grace with Nathan, one of his good days, both of them smiling. And one photo I kept hidden in a drawer. All of us at that community center I'd redesigned. Me, Grace, David, Becca, Tyler, Jennifer, and James. Taken at the ribbon-cutting ceremony last year. 2 families connected by tragedy, choosing to move forward together. I pulled out the photo now, looked at James's face. 7 years old, bright kid, wanted to be a veterinarian. Victoria's son being raised by Jennifer, supported by my anonymous donations, playing with his half-sister who didn't know they were related. The cycle could have continued. Revenge breeding revenge, hate breeding hate. Instead, we'd all made a different choice. Not forgiveness necessarily, but something close to it. Grace came back into the kitchen. Mama, can James come over to play? Asked Jennifer. If she says yes, then yes. Yay! She ran to get her phone, the one we'd given her for emergencies, to text Jennifer. I watched her, this miracle child, and thought about all the ways this story could have ended. Victoria could have succeeded, could have taken Grace, could have destroyed us all completely. Nathan could have died, could still be a vegetable, could have never recovered enough to know his daughter. I could have broken, could have given up, could have let the guilt consume me. But none of those things happened. Instead, we survived. Messy, imperfect, scarred, but alive. Grace returned, breathless. Jennifer says yes, James can come over. Okay, baby. Can I tell her that James is my brother? I froze. How did you bow? I heard you talking to Aunt Becca last week. You said James was my half-brother. Of course she had. Children hear everything. Yes, I said. He is. Cool. I always wanted a brother. She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly. Like having a half-brother whose mother tried to destroy her family was just another fact of life. Maybe that's what resilience looks like. Not pretending the pain doesn't exist, but refusing to let it define you. Come here, I said. Grace climbed into my lap, getting too big for it, but still small enough. I held her tight. I love you, I said, more than anything in this world. I love you too, Mama. Whatever happens, whatever you learn about the past, remember that. Okay? Promise? Promise. She wiggled free, ran back to her room. I sat alone in the kitchen, crying quietly. Not from sadness, not from regret, from relief. We'd made it, against all odds, through everything. We'd made it. That night, after Grace was asleep, I pulled out Victoria's letter from 7 years ago, the one I'd saved for Grace to read someday. I added a new document to the box, a letter of my own. Dear Grace, by the time you read this, you'll know the whole story. Your father's affair, Victoria's revenge, the accident that started it all, my lie, your grandmother's death, all of it. I won't apologize for protecting you from this knowledge when you were young. Childhood should be innocent, but now that you're old enough, you deserve the truth. Here's what I want you to understand. People are complicated. Your father made terrible choices, but he loves you. Victoria tried to destroy us, but she was operating from a place of profound pain. I lied and sent an innocent woman to prison, then spent 12 years trying to pretend it never happened. We all failed. We all hurt people. We all carry guilt that shaped our choices. But we also all tried to do better, eventually. Your father got help. Victoria is studying to help others. I rebuilt my life around honesty and service. We didn't erase the past. We learned to live with it. That's what I hope you learn from this story. Not that we were perfect, but that we tried. That when we fell, we got back up. That when we hurt people, we tried to make amends. You have a half-brother named James. He's a good kid, kind, smart, curious. He doesn't know about any of this yet either. Jennifer will tell him when he's ready. One day, maybe you two will talk about it. Compare notes. Laugh about how complicated your family tree is. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll choose to keep your distance. That's okay too. The point is, you have choices. That's what all of this was about. Choices and consequences. I chose wrong when I was 22. I've spent 18 years living with that choice. But I also chose right when it mattered most. I chose you. I chose to fight for you. I chose to be better than I was. That's all any of us can do. Choose better. Learn from the past. Try to hurt fewer people along the way. And when you fail, because you will fail, we all do, get back up and try again. I love you more than you'll ever know. Mama, I sealed the letter, added it to the box, and put it back in my desk. Grace would read it someday, maybe at 18, maybe at 25, maybe never. But it would be there when she needed it. The next morning, James came over. The two kids played in Grace's room while Jennifer and I drank coffee in the kitchen. You told her, Jennifer said, not a question. She figured it out herself, heard me talking to Becca. How'd she take it? Said she always wanted a brother. We laughed. Kids, so resilient, so accepting of things adults found impossible. Victoria knows, I said, about everything the warden called. Jennifer nodded. I know. She wrote to me, first letter in 5 years, said she was grateful. Said she understood what you'd done. Said maybe she'd do the same if their positions were reversed. Do you believe her? I don't know, maybe. People can change. Prison either breaks you or forces you to rebuild. Victoria seems to be rebuilding. I'll believe it when I see it. Fair enough. We sat in silence, listening to the kids laugh in the other room. Two children who should have been enemies, who could have inherited their parents' hate. Instead, they were just kids. Playing, being friends. Maybe that was the real victory. Not winning, not revenge, not even justice. just breaking the cycle, just choosing over and over again to be better than our worst moments. The sun streamed through the kitchen window. Somewhere in Bedford Hills, Victoria was studying for her social work exam. Somewhere in Manhattan, Nathan was in therapy, slowly recovering. Somewhere in Connecticut, my father was thinking about the granddaughter he'd never really known. And here, in this small Brooklyn apartment, two kids played while their mothers drank coffee and tried to figure out how to explain a past neither of them had control over. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was an ending. And after everything, that was enough. Grace poked her head into the kitchen. "Mama, can we get pizza for lunch?" "Sure, baby." "Can James stay?" "If Jennifer says yes." "Yes," both kids chorused. They ran back to Grace's room, already planning their pizza toppings. Jennifer smiled. "Kids make it look easy. Because for them, it is. They don't carry all our baggage." Lucky them. Lucky us for learning from our mistakes, for giving them a different story. She raised her coffee cup. "To different stories," I clinked my cup against hers. "To different stories." Through the window, I could see the Brooklyn skyline. The city that had witnessed my destruction and my rebuilding. The city where I'd made my worst choices and my best ones. It was a beautiful morning, and for the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Not perfect, not without scars, but okay. And sometimes okay is the best victory of all.
Thunder rattled the stained glass windows of St. Agnes Chapel, the rain pounding down so hard it sounded like fists beating against the ancient roof. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies, white roses, and whispered grief. Black umbrellas stood like silent sentinels at the entrance, marking the line between the storm outside and the even fiercer storm brewing within. No one expected her to wake up, least of all her husband, Nathaniel. Least of all his elegant, dark-haired mistress who lingered close by, clutching a silk handkerchief as though she belonged here. Least of all the dozens of mourners who filled the pews, dressed in their finest black, faces somber but eyes sharp with curiosity. The city's elite had gathered for the funeral of Olivia Lancaster, age 28, 7 months pregnant, beloved wife of tech mogul Nathaniel Lancaster. Headlines over the past week had painted a tragic portrait. Young philanthropist dies suddenly. Billionaire's pregnant wife gone too soon. Photos of Olivia, her soft hazel eyes, her kind smile, her gentle hand resting on her swollen belly, had flooded social media, each post gathering thousands of broken heart emojis and well wishes. But all that grief, all those memories, felt like a cruel joke now. Because Olivia Lancaster was not dead. She blinked, slowly, painfully, her world swaying into focus. Her head throbbed. Her limbs felt impossibly heavy, weighed down by something more than just exhaustion. She tasted bitterness on her tongue, smelled the sharp tang of chemicals beneath the sickly sweetness of flowers. For a terrifying moment, she didn't understand where she was. The polished mahogany of her own casket, the luxurious satin pressed against her cheek, the strange muffled cries and footsteps and organ music, the sensation of something cold and final, something meant to be her end. Olivia's mind spun backward in a rush. The sharp pain in her side, the sudden dizziness, Nathaniel's urgent phone call for help that never came, the last glimpse of his face, calm, almost relieved, before the darkness swallowed her. She tried to move her arms, to cry out, but her body rebelled, each muscle weak and unresponsive. Yet the voices outside her coffin pierced the fog of confusion. "She's gone," a man whispered, voice trembling. "She's really gone, Nathaniel. You're free." Another voice, her husband's voice, answered, low and smooth. "It had to happen, Mia. She was always too fragile. She couldn't handle the pressure of my world. You know that." A sharp, muffled laugh, a woman's laugh, laced with venom and triumph. "Well, darling, you're free now. No wife, no baby to complicate things. Just us." The words crashed into Olivia like icy water. No wife, no baby, just us. Terror raced through her veins. She tried again to move, focusing all her strength, her desperation, on her right hand. Her fingers twitched. She felt the velvet lining. The coffin was only half closed for the viewing, a thin line of light sneaking through the seam. She forced her eyes to adjust, her mind fighting for clarity. Outside, the priest's eulogy faded into the background as Nathaniel and his mistress stepped closer to the casket. Olivia heard the soft tap of stiletto heels on marble, the rustle of silk as the woman leaned in. "Pity we had to do it this way," Mia murmured, voice syrupy. "But now you can inherit it all, love, her money, her shares. The world's yours." Nathaniel's sigh was theatrical. "I never wanted this. I just wanted out." Olivia was a burden, too sweet for this world, too trusting, too naive to see what was right in front of her. The fury that boiled inside Olivia nearly drowned out her fear. Betrayal cut deeper than the drugs in her system. Memories flooded back, Nathaniel's distant gaze, his late nights, the sudden appearance of Mia at every company event, the subtle, snide comments about Olivia's delicate state. She was never meant to survive this. This was their plan. Her husband and his lover plotting her end while she lay helpless, carrying his child. Outside, the crowd began to move. It was nearly time to lower the casket. The undertaker signaled to close the lid. Olivia's panic spiked. She summoned every ounce of willpower, focused on the life growing inside her. For her baby, she could not let this be the end. With a final, desperate surge, Olivia's fist shot upward, slamming into the coffin lid. A sudden thud reverberated through the chapel, freezing everyone in place. Gasps exploded through the crowd. The priest staggered back, dropping his prayer book. Mia shrieked, her face turning white. Nathaniel's hands flew to his mouth, eyes wide with terror. Olivia Lancaster, presumed dead, sat up in her casket, eyes blazing, breath coming in ragged gulps. Her hair tangled, face pale but defiant, one hand instinctively covering her belly. The silence was absolute. For a single electric second, no one moved. Then, as if on cue, chaos erupted. Mourners screamed, phones appeared, cameras flashing, the world capturing every second of this impossible miracle. Mia fainted. Nathaniel backed away, stumbling, muttering, "No, it's not possible. It can't be." But Olivia was done being quiet, done being the trusting, fragile wife. She fixed Nathaniel with a stare that could slice steel. "I'm not dead, Nathaniel," she said, her voice shaking but strong, "and neither is your secret." As her words echoed through the chapel, the story of Olivia Lancaster's death and resurrection was only just beginning. Outside, the chapel was chaos. Mourners stumbled over pews, scrambling to get away from the woman they thought was dead. The soft sobs of grief had turned to screams of fear and confusion. Phones flashed, someone dialed 911, and at least 3 people fainted dead away. Through it all, Olivia remained upright, trembling in her casket, fighting the urge to collapse. She felt weak, like she'd just climbed out of the grave itself, but something fierce burned in her chest. For a long, dizzy moment, she just sat there. The cold air in the church pressed against her skin. Her vision swam with light and shadows, her head still foggy with the remnants of whatever drug Nathaniel and Mia had used. Every instinct told her to lie down, to sleep, to disappear again. But she forced herself to stay awake, to remember. She was alive, and she had to prove it, to herself, to everyone. The paramedics burst into the chapel, pushing through the crowd. "Ma'am, are you all right?" one asked, voice trembling between fear and awe. Olivia blinked up at him, recognizing the uniform. She tried to answer, but her throat felt scraped raw, words coming out as little more than a rasp. "I need help. Please, my baby." They hurried to lift her gently from the casket, laying her on a stretcher. For a moment, Olivia clutched her belly, panic searing her mind. But the baby kicked, a reassuring flutter. Relief nearly overwhelmed her. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for the life inside her, the child that Nathaniel had wanted gone. As the medics rushed her toward the ambulance, Olivia glanced back into the church. Nathaniel and Mia stood frozen at the altar, their masks finally slipping. Nathaniel's perfect posture wilted into shock. Mia's lips parted in horror, her hand still clutching Nathaniel's arm. Neither of them came to her side. On the way to the hospital, Olivia's mind reeled back through her life. She wasn't always this fragile. She wasn't always a victim. Olivia Lancaster had grown up in the shadow of privilege. Her parents, both university professors, taught her that compassion was more important than ambition. She learned the value of kindness, of helping others. Her life was quiet, structured. Summers spent volunteering at animal shelters, winters collecting food for those less fortunate. She never wanted the spotlight. She never wanted drama. After her mother died, Olivia's world became even smaller. She lived with her father in a modest house on the edge of the city, taking care of him after his stroke. She put her dreams on hold, shelving art school applications and her love of painting. For years she was just the dutiful daughter, invisible to the world. Everything changed when she met Nathaniel. He was dazzling, 10 years older, a rising star in the tech world, already making headlines with his startup. He saw her at a fundraiser, drawn by her gentle smile and the way she listened more than she spoke. Nathaniel swept her into his orbit, promising her the kind of fairy tale she'd only read about. At first, Olivia felt lucky. Nathaniel was attentive, generous, always bringing her flowers or booking surprise trips. He introduced her to high society, taught her which fork to use, how to smile at the right people, how to laugh at jokes she didn't understand. He made her believe she could be something more. But over time, the fairy tale cracked. Nathaniel's love was conditional, measured in performances. He wanted Olivia to be the perfect wife, elegant, supportive, and above all, silent. When she voiced her own opinions, he called her naive. When she asked about his business, he changed the subject. Whenever she tried to connect, he retreated behind a wall of charm and cold calculation. By the time Olivia was pregnant, the cracks had become chasms. Nathaniel began staying out late, making excuses about business meetings that never appeared on his calendar. He criticized her weight, her mood swings, her so-called lack of ambition. He hired Mia as his executive assistant and insisted Olivia welcome her like a friend. Olivia, desperate to hold on to the dream, convinced herself things would get better. She busied herself with charity work, painting murals at children's hospitals, teaching art classes to kids in shelters. But no matter how much she gave, it was never enough for Nathaniel. She had no one to turn to. Her father passed away just after she found out she was pregnant. Her friends drifted away, intimidated by Nathaniel's status or driven off by Mia's subtle sabotage. Olivia was left alone in a glass mansion, her every move scrutinized, her every decision questioned. The media loved the story. Billionaire's wife, a modern Cinderella. But behind closed doors, she was a ghost. A fragile, anxious woman who had sacrificed everything, her art, her dreams, her freedom, for a man who didn't love her. Lying in the hospital bed, Olivia stared up at the harsh fluorescent lights. Nurses bustled in and out, checking her vitals, monitoring the baby's heartbeat. The hospital felt both cold and safe. For the first time in months, she didn't have to pretend. A detective arrived, notebook in hand, asking questions. "Do you remember what happened to you, Mrs. Lancaster? Did anyone give you something to drink or eat before you lost consciousness?" Olivia hesitated, mind flickering over Nathaniel's face. His cold smile, Mia's red lips, the bitter aftertaste in her mouth the night she collapsed. She wanted to scream the truth, but she knew no one would believe her. At least, not yet. I'm not sure," she whispered. "It's all a blur." He nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll run some tests. If you remember anything, call me." When he left, Olivia's mind raced. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. But she had survived. Somehow, against every odd, she had clawed her way back from the brink. She was weak, but not broken. And as she placed a trembling hand on her belly, she vowed that her child would never suffer the way she had. Back at the chapel, Nathaniel and Mia faced a media storm they never imagined. Reporters swarmed the church, demanding answers. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was it a miracle or something more sinister? And as Olivia lay alone in the hospital, the world watched and waited for her next move. The world outside the hospital became a circus overnight. News vans crowded the streets, satellite dishes pointed at the sky, hungry for a headline. Talk shows ran with wild theories. Olivia Lancaster, the miracle widow, the wife who rose from the dead. Social media exploded with hashtags, Lancaster Resurrection, Funeral Awakening, and inevitably, what did the husband do? But as the world buzzed, inside her hospital room, Olivia was silent. She watched the rain slide down the window, trying to steady her breathing. Nurses came and went with forced smiles, pretending not to recognize her from TV. Her phone vibrated constantly, calls from numbers she didn't know, messages from friends who hadn't spoken to her in years. She ignored them all. What haunted her most was not the outside chaos, but the echo of Nathaniel's words. She was a burden, too trusting, too naive to see what was right in front of her. His voice replayed every time she closed her eyes, mingled with Mia's taunting laugh. By the next morning, the doctors pronounced both Olivia and the baby healthy. though the toxicology report showed a cocktail of sedatives in her blood. Enough to keep her still, but not enough to end her. Nathaniel was careful, as always. The hospital offered police protection, but Olivia knew how powerful her husband's lawyers were. They spun everything. There was never any evidence, never a direct line back to him. Discharged from the hospital, she faced the inevitable, returning to the Lancaster mansion. It sat perched on a bluff above the city, a modern castle of glass, steel, and secrets. The driveway wound through iron gates, past manicured gardens and marble fountains. To the world, it was a symbol of success, a monument to Nathaniel's genius. To Olivia, it was a cage. She hesitated at the front doors, keys trembling in her hand. A butler greeted her with polite shock, then ushered her inside. The entrance gleamed with white marble floors, gold accents, and a 30-foot chandelier that looked like falling stars. Portraits of Nathaniel hung everywhere, smiling at galas, shaking hands with politicians, his arm around Olivia at their wedding. She felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She wandered through the silent rooms. The grand library with its floor-to-ceiling windows, the formal dining hall that hosted senators and CEOs, the private art gallery Nathaniel had built to impress her. Everything was curated, expensive, cold. No sign of real love, just the trappings of success. In the living room, a portrait stared back at her, Olivia in her wedding dress, smiling. She barely recognized herself. The innocence, the hope, the trust. It all seemed like another lifetime. She climbed the stairs to her bedroom, heart pounding. She expected to find everything untouched, preserved like a mausoleum. Instead, a chill ran through her. Her closet had been half emptied. Most of her clothes were gone. Only a handful of maternity dresses remained, all in muted colors. The jewelry box was missing, her wedding ring left on the dresser like an accusation. Down the hall, voices drifted from Nathaniel's private office. She recognized the low rumble of his voice, the sharp edge of Mia's laughter. They didn't even try to be discreet. Not anymore. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. "She can't prove anything," Mia said. "She was drugged. They'll call her unstable. She'll look desperate." Nathaniel's reply was icy. "We'll spin it. I'll say she suffered a breakdown. If she goes to the police, my team will bury it. By next week, no one will care." Olivia's blood ran cold. She felt the walls closing in, the same suffocating panic she'd known for months. But this time, something had changed. She wasn't the naive girl Nathaniel married. She was a mother now, her child's only protector. The past replayed in her mind. The countless parties where Nathaniel paraded her around like a trophy, the women who circled him, always too close, the coldness that crept into his eyes whenever she mentioned the baby, the cruel jokes he made with his friends about breeding for headlines. The day Mia arrived, first as an assistant, then as Nathaniel's shadow, then as something much more. The truth was, Olivia had been alone long before the funeral. She'd lived in a palace, but she was invisible. Suddenly, the front door slammed. Olivia flinched, heart racing. She peeked through the banister. Nathaniel and Mia stepped into the foyer, arm in arm, laughing as if nothing had happened. They stopped when they saw her at the top of the stairs. Nathaniel recovered first, sliding his mask back on. "Olivia, we're so glad you're home," he said, voice full of forced concern. "How are you feeling?" Mia smirked behind him, eyes glittering with malice. "We were just planning your welcome back dinner," she said sweetly. Olivia forced herself to look them both in the eye. "Don't bother. I'm not hungry." An awkward silence filled the grand hallway. The tension was thick as syrup. Nathaniel stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You look tired, Liv. Maybe you should rest. We'll talk later, when you're feeling stable." Mia snickered, turning away. "Maybe a long nap would help. You seem to like those." Olivia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She turned, climbed back to her room, and shut the door behind her. She pressed her hands to her belly, feeling the baby move. She'd survived the impossible. She'd come back from the dead. But in this palace of secrets, her battle was only beginning. In the silence, she made a promise to her child and herself. She would never be powerless again. Whatever it took, she'd find a way out and take her revenge. The Lancaster mansion was beautiful on the outside, a palace of glass and gold set atop the city's wealthiest hill. But inside, it was a battlefield. Olivia barely slept her first night back. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the scrape of Nathaniel's voice, or Mia's cold laughter echoing down the marble halls. In the darkness, she replayed the words she overheard. Unstable, desperate, breakdown. It was clear. Her husband and his mistress weren't just cruel, they were dangerous. Morning light barely crept through the blackout curtains. Olivia sat up in bed, her body still weak, every muscle aching as if she'd climbed out of her own grave. Her baby kicked. A small reassurance that she wasn't alone. She rose and walked to the window, staring at the city sprawling beneath the estate. Somewhere down there, normal people lived honest lives. Up here, everything was a performance. Downstairs, the clatter of silverware and the low hum of voices signaled the beginning of another Lancaster day. The staff were tense. She saw it in the way they averted their eyes, the tightness in their smiles. Even the housekeeper, Mrs. Branson, a sturdy woman with a kind heart, seemed different, always glancing nervously at the security cameras. Olivia forced herself to dress. Simple black pants, a loose sweater, nothing fancy. She didn't want to look weak, but she didn't want to play princess either. She walked slowly down the grand staircase, steadying herself with every step. The dining room was all glass walls and fresh flowers, the table set for 3. Nathaniel stood at the head, reading emails on his tablet. He looked up, putting on his practiced, sympathetic expression. "Morning, Liv," he said. "You look better." Mia was already seated, sipping fresh squeezed orange juice, dressed in a white silk blouse and diamonds. She didn't bother to hide her smirk. "Sleep well?" Mia asked, her tone dripping with mock concern. Olivia took a seat across from them, refusing to break eye contact. "I'm here, aren't I?" Nathaniel tried to sound reassuring. "We're all a bit shaken. What happened was traumatic for everyone. You need time. If you want, we can call your doctor, or a therapist." Olivia knew what he was doing, laying groundwork for the breakdown story. Make her look unstable. Gaslight her until she started to doubt her own sanity. She forced a polite smile. "Thank you, but I think I just need space. Less interference." Mia leaned forward, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on the table. "Of course, but you know, Olivia, you gave us all quite a scare. We thought you were gone." Nathaniel barely slept for days. The lie was bold. Olivia could see it in Mia's eyes, the gleam of someone who thinks she's already won. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. He picked it up, scrolling through messages. "We'll need to make a statement to the press. Something about your miraculous recovery. Keep it vague. The world wants to see you. Maybe just a photo, looking, well." Mia snickered. "Maybe put on a little makeup. People are saying you look like a ghost." Olivia fought back a surge of rage. "Funny, I was thinking about ghosts too," she replied, her gaze never leaving Mia's. "Some spirits just can't rest, you know?" For a moment, the room was tense. Nathaniel shot Mia a warning look. Olivia rose from the table. "I'll be in my studio, alone please." She made her way to the far end of the mansion, to the art room Nathaniel had built to show off for guests, but which she'd turned into her own sanctuary. Sunlight streamed in through skylights, illuminating half-finished canvases. Here, for a little while, she could breathe. She set up a blank canvas, her hands trembling, and let the brush do the work. Each stroke calmed her, helped her remember who she was before all this madness. But peace never lasted. After lunch, as she passed the library, she overheard Mia on the phone. "Yes, everything's under control," Mia purred. "Olivia's back, but she's barely functioning. Trust me, she's not a threat. Nathaniel and I have everything. The house, the company shares, she won't fight." Olivia's heart pounded. So that was their plan. Take everything, leave her with nothing. Maybe worse. She walked to the garden for air. The roses were in full bloom, but she barely noticed. She heard footsteps behind her. Nathaniel appeared, his mask gone for a moment. "Olivia," he said softly, "why are you making this harder than it needs to be? You've always been fragile. People expect you to fall apart. Don't disappoint them now." She stared at him, searching for any hint of the man she married. There was none. He stepped closer. "You don't have to fight us. Just fade away. I'll make sure you're taken care of. It's better for everyone." A chill ran through her. This was his threat, hidden behind a smile. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned and walked away, hands pressed protectively to her belly. She was terrified, but something inside her hardened. They thought she was weak. They thought she would break. But Olivia Lancaster was done playing their game. She went back to her room, locked the door, and pulled out her old journal. She began writing everything, what she'd heard, what she'd seen, every cruel word, every threat. She needed evidence. She needed allies. She wasn't sure who to trust yet, but she knew one thing: she would not let her enemies win. As the sun set behind the glass palace, Olivia looked in the mirror. For the first time, she saw not a victim, but a survivor. The enemies in her house had no idea what was coming for them. A week passed, but the air inside the Lancaster mansion only grew heavier. Olivia felt like she was living under a microscope. Every move was watched, by Nathaniel, by Mia, by the household staff who reported back to them. She barely slept. She barely ate. Her energy was fading, but her resolve grew harder every time Nathaniel smiled that cold smile, or Mia brushed by her with a taunting, accidental bump. Olivia's only sanctuary was her art studio. One morning, as she painted, her phone buzzed. A message from Nathaniel's assistant. Black tie required. Family appearance at the Foundation Gala tonight. Press will be present. No request, just a command. Olivia stared at the text, stomach twisting. She hadn't been to a public event since her funeral. She knew what this was. Nathaniel's chance to parade his perfect family, spin the narrative, and bury her truth beneath glitter and charity. That evening, a limo pulled up outside the house. Olivia wore a dark blue gown that skimmed her swollen belly. Her hair swept back to reveal a pale, determined face. Nathaniel greeted her at the door with Mia on his arm. "Ready?" he asked, all charm for the cameras. "Let's not keep anyone waiting." The ride was silent, tension crackling between the three of them. As they pulled up to the grand ballroom, cameras flashed, capturing every second. Olivia stepped out first, greeted by a wall of reporters. "Olivia, how does it feel to be back? Is it true you woke up at your own funeral? How is the baby?" Questions flew at her like arrows, but she held her head high, keeping her answers short, her eyes fixed on the golden lights ahead. Inside, the ballroom was a world apart. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling. Guests in tuxedos and glittering gowns sipped champagne, whispering as Olivia passed. She felt their eyes, pity, curiosity, and a few sharp with jealousy. She caught her reflection in a wall of mirrored glass. Poised, mysterious, and so alone. Nathaniel immediately slipped away to greet donors, leaving Olivia exposed. Mia circled her like a shark, smiling for the press. "Smile, darling," Mia whispered through gritted teeth, "or you'll ruin Nathaniel's big night." Olivia forced a smile, her body tense. As they mingled, she noticed Nathaniel at the center of a laughing circle of investors, his hand on Mia's back, introducing her as a key member of the family. He barely acknowledged Olivia, as if she were just a distant relative. Halfway through the evening, the charity auction began. Nathaniel took the stage, handsome and charming, thanking the crowd for their generosity. "I'm especially grateful for the support of my beautiful wife Olivia, whose strength has inspired us all," he declared, the lie ringing through the room. Cameras zoomed in, applause rose, but as Nathaniel spoke, Mia sidled up beside Olivia. "You're making this hard on everyone, you know," she whispered, voice low and venomous. "If you really loved Nathaniel, you'd disappear quietly. The baby too. He deserves better than this mess." Before Olivia could reply, the MC announced, "And now, our special guests, Nathaniel Lancaster and his lovely family, please join us on stage for a photo." The crowd turned. Olivia's heart hammered. She moved woodenly, climbing onto the stage beside Nathaniel. The flashbulbs went off in a blinding storm. As the crowd clapped, Olivia felt Mia's hand brush against hers. Mia leaned in, her lips barely moving. "After tonight, you'll wish you'd stayed dead." Then, in front of everyone, Nathaniel reached for Mia's hand, publicly, boldly, as if she belonged there. The room fell into a shocked hush, only for a second. But it was enough. Olivia's humiliation was complete, broadcast for all to see. The media ate it up. Lancaster love triangle? Pregnant wife, billionaire husband, and the other woman. Headlines blared the next morning. Social media was a storm. Olivia became the punchline of memes and late-night jokes. She tried not to look, but she saw it all. The hashtags, the gifs, the freeze frame of her stunned face as Nathaniel held Mia's hand. The calls started soon after. Reporters, gossip bloggers, distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years, even so-called friends, some sympathetic, most just hungry for gossip. The humiliation was relentless. Nathaniel didn't come home that night. The next morning, Olivia found a note on the kitchen table. "For your own good, stay out of the spotlight. The board is nervous." It wasn't signed, But she knew his handwriting, and she saw Mia's lipstick mark at the bottom. That day, Olivia finally broke. She locked herself in her studio, collapsed to the floor, and let herself cry for hours. Big, silent, shaking sobs that left her empty and cold. She felt the old Olivia die, piece by piece. The trusting wife, the hopeful mother, the woman who believed in fairy tales. But as the sun set and the world moved on without her, something new stirred deep inside Olivia, a spark that refused to be extinguished. She pressed a hand to her belly, wiped her tears, and stared at the blank canvas before her. If this was her lowest point, then she would climb out. They thought they'd destroyed her. But Olivia Lancaster was still here, and she was about to become something no one, not Nathaniel, not Mia, not the entire watching world, could ever predict. The aftermath of the gala felt like a slow-motion disaster. Olivia spent the next several days in her room, the curtains drawn, her phone silenced. The mansion became a ghost house. She barely noticed the muted sounds of Mia's laughter echoing off marble, or Nathaniel's voice barking orders into his phone in the study. She didn't eat. She barely slept. Haunted by the flashes of humiliation she'd suffered on stage, the image of Nathaniel's hand entwined with Mia's, the cameras, the whispers, the world turning her pain into entertainment. In those dark hours, Olivia's mind wandered to dangerous places. She remembered how easy it would be to disappear, to fade out of this life and let the world forget her. No one would miss her. Nathaniel had made sure of that. The baby was the only thing that anchored her. Sometimes when she pressed her hands to her belly, she felt a flutter, a kick, a tiny reminder that she was not alone. Not really. Still, she cried until she was empty, her sobs echoing through the cold walls, ignored by everyone. One night, the housekeeper, Mrs. Branson, knocked gently at her door, a bowl of soup in hand. "You have to eat, dear," she pleaded, her eyes brimming with concern. "You need your strength. For the baby." Olivia managed a shaky smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Branson. I'll try." But the soup sat untouched on her nightstand as Olivia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She tried to remember who she'd been before all this. She used to dream. She used to paint, to volunteer, to laugh. Now her only companion was pain. The press didn't let up. Every morning brought a new headline. Olivia Lancaster, the ghost wife. Pregnant, alone, and betrayed. Talk show hosts debated whether she was crazy or courageous. Olivia didn't care anymore. Let them say what they wanted. She had nothing left to lose. The anxiety became physical. She shook at random times, panic attacks rolling through her like waves. She vomited often, unsure if it was the stress or the pregnancy. She was afraid to go outside, afraid someone would recognize her. She didn't want pity. She didn't want anything but silence. Nathaniel never visited her, not once. He texted a few times, "The board wants you to stay quiet. Let's not make this worse. Think of the company." Each message felt colder than the last. Mia sent no messages, only looks, smug, victorious, triumphant whenever Olivia stumbled into the hallway. One evening, Olivia forced herself to walk to the nursery they'd once decorated together. The wallpaper was covered with pale blue clouds, a mobile of tiny silver stars hanging over the empty crib. She traced her fingers over the edge, imagining what her baby's laugh would sound like. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time there was something different in them. Anger. Not just at Nathaniel, or Mia, or even herself. Anger at a world that would rather watch her fall than help her rise. She found herself talking to her unborn child in the darkness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I'm so weak. I'm sorry I let them do this to us." But the baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if to tell her she wasn't alone, as if to say, "Fight." That night, Olivia finally slept. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears, but the heaviness in her chest had shifted. The pain was still there, raw and aching, but under it was something else, resolve. The next morning, she showered, dressed, and opened the curtains. Sunlight spilled into the room, blinding at first but warm. She ate a small breakfast, the first real food in days. Mrs. Branson smiled in relief. "That's better, darling," she said, squeezing Olivia's hand. Olivia thanked her, her voice still rough from disuse. She walked through the house, feeling every bruise on her soul. She didn't hide when she passed Mia in the hall. She didn't flinch when Nathaniel brushed past her, pretending not to see her. Instead, she went back to her art studio. She stared at the blank canvas, heart pounding. Her hands shook as she lifted a brush, but she forced herself to start. Color spilled across the white expanse, dark, furious, but alive. Each stroke was a scream, a prayer, a declaration. She painted her pain, her anger, her hope for her child. She painted the woman she wanted to become. For hours, she lost herself in the work, the world outside fading. When she finished, she stepped back and saw herself, a woman rising from ashes, battered but unbroken, carrying a child toward the light. As dusk fell, Olivia looked out over the city, her heart beating stronger. She wasn't healed. She wasn't safe. But she was done being afraid. She opened her journal and started writing. A plan, a promise, a way forward. They thought she would crumble. They thought they had won. But Olivia Lancaster was still here, and she was no longer their victim. The days blurred together as Olivia forced herself back to life. She stuck to routines, eating small meals, taking short walks, painting through her nightmares. But something inside her had hardened. She'd hit rock bottom, but now she was clawing her way back up, each breath a little less shallow, each step a little steadier. One gray afternoon, a letter arrived at the mansion. It wasn't delivered through the usual household mail. This one came by hand, slipped under her studio door. Olivia found it just as she finished a painting, a wild, furious swirl of color that looked nothing like her old work. The envelope was plain, no return address, her name written in bold, unfamiliar print. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, she found a single flash drive and a note. Trust no one in this house. You're not alone. Play this when you're certain you're not being watched. Olivia's heartbeat quickened. She checked the hall, locked the studio door, then powered up her laptop, one Nathaniel never touched. The files on the drive were simple audio recordings, but the first one made her blood run cold. She won't survive this, not after the drugs. If she does, we'll say she's delusional. She's always been unstable. No one will believe her. That was Nathaniel's voice. There was no mistaking it. A second voice, Mia's, followed. You're sure about the will? Her shares go to you if anything happens? Already taken care of, Nathaniel replied. Once the baby is gone, there's nothing left to tie me to her. She's just a sad story. Olivia listened, jaw clenched. There it was, the proof she'd needed, not just of betrayal, but of attempted murder. Not only had Nathaniel and Mia conspired to destroy her, but they'd done it for money, for power, for freedom from responsibility. She shook with rage and relief. But who had sent the recording? Who else knew the truth? A second file played, quieter this time. A man's voice, gentle but firm. Olivia, if you're hearing this, it means you survived. You don't know me, but I knew your father. He helped me once, a long time ago. I work for people who don't like what Nathaniel's doing, not just to you, but to the company, the charities, everyone. If you want to fight, don't do it alone. Meet me at the old Elmhurst Gallery tomorrow at noon. Tell no one. Olivia's head spun. Was this real or another trap? She took a deep breath, listening again to the recording. The details were too specific, the concern in the voice too genuine to be one of Nathaniel's games. For the first time in months, hope flickered in her chest. That night, Olivia barely slept. She hid the flash drive, locked her laptop, and lay awake planning. If she could trust this stranger, she might finally have a chance to take her life back. She could expose Nathaniel and Mia, not just to the public, but to the law. Morning came heavy with rain. Olivia dressed plainly, pulling her hair into a bun, and left the mansion through the garden gate. She felt exposed on the street, every step watched by unseen eyes. But she pressed on, the city's noise oddly comforting after weeks of silence. Elmhurst Gallery was abandoned now, dust and memories clinging to the windows. Inside, she found a man waiting near the back, mid-50s, gray-haired, wearing a plain suit and a warm, tired smile. "You must be Olivia," he said softly. "My name is Richard." She studied him. There was nothing threatening about him, nothing like Nathaniel or his cold-eyed business partners. "Why are you helping me?" Richard explained quickly. Years ago, Olivia's father had saved Richard's family from financial ruin. He'd never forgotten it, and after her father died, he'd kept watch from a distance. Nathaniel made a lot of enemies on his way up. "I have friends in law enforcement, in the press. We can help you, but you have to be smart. You have to fight." He handed her a folder, evidence, forged medical records, emails between Nathaniel and a shadowy lawyer, photos of Mia and Nathaniel together weeks before her accident, enough to start a real investigation. Olivia's head spun. Why now? she whispered. Why me? Because you're not weak, Richard said, his gaze steady. You survived. You're a mother. And you have the truth now. All you need is the courage to use it. Tears burned Olivia's eyes, but she refused to cry. For the first time, she saw herself not as a victim, but as a woman with a weapon, proof of the evil done to her. She left the gallery clutching the evidence, heart pounding. Every sound seemed amplified. She knew she had to be careful. If Nathaniel and Mia realized what she had, they would stop at nothing. But Olivia wasn't going back to being afraid. That night, Olivia drafted an email to a trusted journalist, an old friend from her charity work, someone who hated corruption as much as she did. She didn't hit send yet, but she was ready. The game had changed. She had allies, she had proof, and she had something even more powerful. Nothing left to lose. For the first time in a long time, Olivia stood at the window, looking out over the city. The rain had stopped. Lights glittered across the skyline, and in her reflection she saw not just herself, but the fierce, determined mother she'd become. This was her twist. The victim was gone. In her place was someone ready to fight back. Sunrise painted the city gold the next morning. For the first time in months, Olivia woke before her alarm, heart pounding. Not with fear, but with something fierce and bright. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, running her fingers over her tangled hair, her pale, tired face. The woman staring back at her looked like a ghost, but behind her eyes burned a new kind of fire. She turned on the shower and let the hot water wash the pain from her skin. Every scar, every bruise, every sleepless night melted down the drain. Olivia dried off, stood naked before the mirror, and made a silent promise. I am not invisible. I am not weak. I am a mother, and I am not done. For hours, she worked. She brushed and styled her hair, applied makeup, not to hide, but to reclaim her face. She chose a dress Nathaniel hated. Crimson, bold, hugging her curves and accentuating her baby bump, defiant and unashamed. She finished the look with her mother's sapphire earrings, a symbol of her family's quiet strength. Downstairs, Mrs. Branson nearly dropped her tray. You look radiant, Miss Olivia. Olivia smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Branson. Can you help me with something? The housekeeper nodded, eyes shining. I need you to drive me into the city. I have business to handle, and I want you with me. They left the mansion together, Olivia feeling every eye on her. For the first time, she didn't care if Mia saw her. She didn't care what Nathaniel thought. In the car, she explained everything to Mrs. Branson, the recordings, the evidence, the meeting at Elmhurst. The older woman squeezed her hand. You're braver than you know, child. Whatever you need, I'm with you. Olivia's first stop was her lawyer's office. She strode in, shoulders back, eyes clear. She handed over the evidence, every file and photo meticulously copied onto a new flash drive. Her lawyer, Miss Fields, listened with growing outrage. We have enough to destroy them, Miss Fields said, voice hard. But you need to be ready. Once we move, there's no going back. They'll try to discredit you, smear you. I'm not scared, Olivia said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. I want to go public. I want the world to see what they did to me, to our baby. I want Nathaniel and Mia to know they can't win. They planned for hours, going over every detail. Olivia insisted her story come out on her own terms. No more whispers, no more rumors. She wrote her statement with trembling hands, but as she typed, her voice grew stronger. I was betrayed by the man I loved and nearly killed for his ambition, but I survived. My child survived, and I refused to hide anymore. From the law office, Olivia went straight to her favorite boutique. The owner, an old friend, embraced her, tears in her eyes. You are always the kindest soul, Olivia. Let's remind them who you are. They picked a wardrobe, striking dresses, smart blazers, soft clothes for comfort, but also power. Olivia let herself enjoy the process, each new outfit a layer of armor. The transformation wasn't just on the outside. Olivia called her old friends, those she'd lost touch with during her marriage. People who loved her before Nathaniel changed everything. She told them the truth. Some wept, some offered support. All promised to stand with her if things got ugly. She returned to the mansion just before sunset, face glowing, spirits soaring. Mia nearly choked on her wine as Olivia swept through the front door, heels clicking on the marble. Well, don't you look dramatic, Mia sneered. Olivia met her gaze with icy calm. I'll be leaving the house soon. You should enjoy your time here while you can. Nathaniel, home early for once, heard the commotion. He stormed into the foyer, mask slipping. "Where the hell have you been?" Olivia stood her ground. "With my lawyer, with friends, with people who care about me." He glanced at Mrs. Branson, who just smiled sweetly. "You're making a mistake, Liv." Olivia's reply was steady. "No, Nathaniel. The mistake was trusting you. That ends now." She went upstairs, packed her things, and called a car to take her to a safe hotel in the city. She sent her lawyer the final go-ahead: release the evidence, call the press, and be ready for anything. That night, she stood in front of the full-length hotel mirror, running her hands over her stomach. She spoke aloud to her child. "They wanted us broken. They thought we'd disappear. But we're still here, and tomorrow, the world will hear our story." Her phone buzzed, a message from the journalist she'd contacted weeks before. "Ready to go live when you are." "Are you sure?" She replied, "I'm sure. It's time." Olivia Lancaster, no longer a ghost, no longer a victim, looked out at the city skyline, lights sparkling like a promise. Tomorrow she would face the world. Tomorrow she would begin again. The next morning, the city buzzed with anticipation. Social media sizzled with rumors. Olivia Lancaster, the miracle wife, was making a public appearance for the first time since her so-called funeral. The press, hungry for a spectacle, crowded the steps of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, where the annual philanthropy gala was about to begin. Inside, the ballroom was already packed. Celebrities, business titans, journalists, and politicians milled under the shimmer of 1,000 crystal lights. Nathaniel was there, all sharp tuxedo and fake charm, Mia gleaming on his arm in a champagne gown. Their friends buzzed around them, offering congratulations and snide jokes, unaware of the storm about to break. Olivia arrived fashionably late, every inch a queen. She wore a midnight blue couture gown that hugged her pregnant figure, her hair swept up, sapphire earrings sparkling. Cameras flashed as she entered, the room falling into an electric hush. No one missed the look on Nathaniel's face as he saw her. First shock, then a flash of something like fear. Olivia moved through the crowd with calm confidence, pausing for a few poised photos. She greeted old friends and allies, gathering subtle support. Her lawyer, Miss Fields, and her journalist friend hovered at the edge, ready for the signal. Mrs. Branson, disguised as a catering manager, stood nearby with a subtle nod of encouragement. As the evening wore on, Nathaniel couldn't avoid her forever. He finally approached, trying to project an air of control. Mia trailed behind, her smile tight and eyes darting. "Olivia," Nathaniel said, "I didn't expect you here." Olivia smiled coolly. "You should have. This is my city, too." The MC called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to recognize Nathaniel Lancaster and his wife for their generosity. Please join us on stage for a special award." The lights brightened as Nathaniel, Mia, and Olivia made their way to the stage. Cameras swiveled, live feeds streaming to millions. The MC handed Olivia the microphone. She took a steady breath, heart pounding, but not with fear. "Thank you all for your kindness," Olivia began, her voice clear and steady. "I stand before you tonight, not just as Nathaniel Lancaster's wife, or as a survivor, but as someone with the truth." The crowd murmured, a ripple of unease. Nathaniel shifted nervously. Mia squeezed his arm. "For months I was told to be silent, to smile for the cameras, to disappear when it suited others," Olivia continued. "But silence is no longer an option. Tonight I want to speak for every woman who's been betrayed, manipulated, or abused by those who were supposed to protect them." She turned to the press, her lawyer, her friends. "Everything I'm about to say is supported by evidence, recordings, documents, witnesses." She nodded, and Miss Fields handed flash drives to reporters in the front row. Nathaniel tried to grab her arm, voice tight. "Olivia, what are you?" She stepped away, eyes blazing. "Don't interrupt. You and Mia tried to kill me for money. You drugged me, staged my death, and planned to steal everything I built with you. But I survived, and I have proof." Gasps filled the room. Reporters scrambled to check the files. Screens behind the stage lit up. Emails, transcripts, audio files, even surveillance footage showing Nathaniel and Mia plotting together. Mia's face went white, her composure shattering. She tried to flee the stage but was blocked by security. Nathaniel sputtered denials, sweating, desperate. But it was over. The truth was out. "I am pressing charges for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy," Olivia declared. "My lawyers are already working with the authorities. I want everyone here and watching at home to know, I am not a victim. I am a survivor, and my child will be born into a world where the truth matters more than money or power. The applause began quietly, then thundered through the room. Women wept, men cheered. Cameras caught every tear and every triumphant smile. The police arrived before the gala was over, escorting Nathaniel and Mia out in handcuffs. Reporters swarmed Olivia, but she simply smiled, exhausted but finally free. Afterward, Olivia sat alone in the quiet garden behind the hotel, looking up at the stars. Mrs. Branson joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did it, dear. You really did it. Olivia let out a long, shaking breath. For my baby, for everyone who's ever been hurt and silenced. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. There would be battles in court, more headlines, maybe even danger. But tonight, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Her journey from victim to warrior was complete, and as she watched the city lights glitter in the distance, Olivia knew that her story was far from over. News of Nathaniel and Mia's arrest exploded across every screen. Social feeds overflowed with support for Olivia. Justice for Olivia, she survived, women rise. People from around the world wrote messages, survivors, daughters, mothers, and even men who admitted they'd been bystanders to cruelty. For a moment, Olivia's story was no longer just her own. It became a rallying cry for everyone who'd ever been silenced. In the days that followed, the world shifted. Olivia spent hours giving statements to detectives, working with her lawyers, and coordinating with child protection specialists. She moved into a secure apartment downtown, one with sunlight streaming through wide windows and a nursery she decorated herself. Soft clouds, gentle blues, and splashes of color from her own paintings. Everywhere she went, Olivia was recognized. Some wanted autographs, others simply thanked her for her courage. There were days she felt exhausted by the attention, but every time doubt crept in, she remembered the reason she'd fought so hard. Her child, still safe and growing inside her, a living symbol of her survival. One morning, as she waited for coffee in a quiet cafe, a young woman approached her, tears in her eyes. I watched your speech at the gala, she whispered. I left my boyfriend that night. He used to hurt me. I needed you to know you changed my life. Olivia hugged her, both of them crying softly, surrounded by strangers who nodded in understanding. That same week, Olivia testified at a closed-door hearing. Nathaniel and Mia tried to spin their story, but the evidence was overwhelming. Olivia sat tall, never flinching under cross-examination. The truth was undeniable, and justice moved swiftly. Her divorce was finalized. The court awarded her the majority of the estate, not just the house or the money, but full custody of her unborn child and legal protection from Nathaniel and his allies. She donated most of the money to women's shelters and abuse survivors, funding free legal aid and counseling for anyone in need. Her actions started a wave of similar donations across the country. The day her baby was born, a healthy girl she named Grace, Olivia felt a joy deeper than anything she'd known. She held Grace in her arms, breathing in her new daughter's scent, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she felt whole. Olivia painted again, her art now sought after by galleries and collectors. Each canvas told a story, not of pain, but of hope, healing, and fierce rebirth. She began speaking at conferences and on television, sharing her journey honestly, always finishing with a message for those listening. Strength isn't measured by how little you suffer. It's how you rise when the world thinks you're finished. I was betrayed, I was silenced, and I was almost erased. But I found my voice. You can too. No woman, no person should ever believe they are powerless. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not defined by what others do to you, but by how you choose to live. Women wrote letters from every corner of the world. Some shared stories of heartbreak and struggle. Others just thanked Olivia for showing them that survival and thriving was possible. The news called it a movement. But for Olivia, it was simply the ripple effect of telling the truth. Years passed. Olivia built a foundation to help survivors and young mothers. She and Grace traveled the world together, painting murals in orphanages, building safe houses, and creating spaces where hope was stronger than fear. On the anniversary of her awakening, Olivia hosted a gathering, women and children laughing together in a sunlit garden, voices rising in song. Olivia looked at her daughter, now running through wildflowers, her laughter ringing free and felt a peace that filled every scar, every memory. As the party faded and dusk settled in, Olivia gave one last speech. Her voice was gentle, but every word carried the force of a promise. There will always be people who try to write your ending. There will always be those who mistake kindness for weakness and silence for consent. But let my story remind you, sometimes the victim rises. Sometimes she fights back, and sometimes she wins. So to every woman listening, never let anyone tell you who you are. Never let betrayal steal your worth. And if you ever wake up in darkness, remember, you are your own light, and your story is not over. As the applause rose, Olivia smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for herself and for Grace. She had lost everything once, but rebuilt it all with truth, courage, and the relentless belief that tomorrow could be better. No more funerals, no more silence, only new beginnings. So the story has ended, and our wonderful friends, are you still here until now? If you are really here with me, I know that something in Olivia's journey must have touched your heart, just as it's touched mine. What this story shows us is that even when life tries to write your ending, even when betrayal cuts deep and loneliness feels endless, you can still rise. You are not defined by what others do to you, but by how you choose to fight back and build your life again. Remember this quote from the wisdom of heterodoxism. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed, it means the damage no longer controls our lives. Like Olivia, you can find your voice, your strength, and your light, no matter how dark it seems. If you felt something real in this story, I invite you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and comment below about the moment that moved you most. Maybe your words will help someone else find hope. Remember, your story isn't over yet, and you're never as alone as you think.